Okay, in this lesson we're going to look at how to do something repetitively. Now in previous programs that I asked you to do, there were situations where, for example, I asked you to print out all the decimal numbers and their hex equivalents between 0 and 15, and you had to literally do 16 different printfs in order to do that. What we're going to look at here is how to make a construct that will do something deliberately a certain number of times. There are two main ways of doing this. One is called a for loop and the other is called a while loop. Now, strictly speaking, C programming could actually do without one or the other. Generally speaking, we use a for loop when we know how many times something is going to run, and we use a while loop when we're maybe not certain how many times it will run. Maybe perhaps some criteria has to be met before it stops repeating itself. But that said, as I say, they are actually interchangeable, and that's what I will show you in the next recording. So in this one I'm going to start with a for loop, and in the next recording I'll do a while loop and show you how to make the link between a for loop and a while loop. So I'm just going to pause while I start writing the program. So here's the basic body of the program is now written, and what we're going to do is we're going to add something that is going to do something repetitively. What we're going to do is we're going to print the numbers 0 to 9 in sequence along a straight line. So in order to do that, I'm going to need a variable, so I'm going to call that I. Now, I've said to you before that you should really use variable names that mean something, but when you're using a fairly simplistic loop that is just going to do something a certain number of times, if there's an appropriate name, that's fine, give it to it. But if there isn't an appropriate name to give it, it's perfectly fine to use the letters I, J or K. Normally in sequence, I would be the preferable one, and then J and K after that, if you're going to have 2 or 3 loops within each other or something like that. It tends to be a convention used within C, so people recognize usually what the I variable is going to do. But that said, you could call it anything, but it's better to either use the convention or give it a name that makes sense. So the for loop takes the following format. Firstly, you use the keyword for, and you've got a set of brackets. Now, within this, you need to have 2 semicolons, and we're going to fit things with in between each one of those semicolons. Remember not to use single, commas. You need to use semicolons with inside in the for loop. And the first part of the for loop is called the initialization. We already have declared a variable up above, which we've called I. So I'm going to set I to be 0, and that's the default value for it when the for loop starts. I'm going to put it just like that with no spaces in between it, so that we can clearly see that that's attached to that. Now the next thing is the test that we're going to run after each iteration. So what happens is you go in the first time and you set the variable I to something. We set it to 0 in this case, and then we do a test. And if that test is true, we run the for loop, and if it's not true, we jump straight out of the for loop. So I'm going to say in this case is I smaller than 10. And you'll see in a moment why I've picked that particular value. The next thing we decide is what change we want to happen in I each time the loop goes around. If we don't change I at all, what will occur is that I will stay a value of 0. And as we can see in this case, in the test, I is certainly smaller than 10, so that will be true. If we run the loop and we don't change I in any way, then the next time it will be true, and the next time, and the next time, and the next time, and forevermore it will be true. So that will mean that the loop will never end and your program will actually hang. There are certain reasons in which we want a loop to remain running forever, but they're not normally within the PC platform that we run. You may do it in an embedded system such as a life support machine or something like that, or some more some smaller or less mission critical applications which you want to just run forever. In other words, that they are the only application that's running. But what we're going to decide here is how much we're going to change I by each time. So we could say we're going to change it by 1, which you would say I equals I plus 1. Or the more normal way of writing that is to just say I plus plus, and that will actually change the value of I by 1 each time. If we wanted to change it by a value of 2, we would say I equals I plus 2, and we can see that running in a moment if we like. So we then have the opening and closing brace, which of course is a very important part of this construct. Similar to the if statement, you have to have an opening and closing brace, and within that brace is what the loop is actually going to do. So in this case we wanted to print out the value of I in each case. So as I is 0, it'll print out a 0. When it comes around the next time, when I is a value of 1, it'll print out a 1, and so on. And we will space those across the screen. So we'll do 1 printf, and we'll just use %d, and I'm just going to leave a space then, 1 space, and I'm not going to use a /n because that'll put it onto a new line, which I may or may not want to do. And then I have to decide what goes into the %d here, so I'm going to put the variable I here. And that's pretty much it. So what will happen is that this printf statement, rather than just being run a single time, will be run 10 times, as each value of I is incremented here. So I goes from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. Each time it gets tested, and assuming that the test still gives a true result, then this printf statement will be printed each time. Eventually I will become a value of 10, which is no longer smaller than 10, and then we will jump straight to the end of the loop and continue running. Let's give that a quick go. And we can see here we've printed the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. Now, what I could do is I could put a /n here, and what that would do is it would print my 10 numbers straight down in a row. So in other words, after each printf, there's a new line, and then the next time the for loop runs, it prints the number on a new line. Let's take the example that you did earlier, where you wanted to print the hex numbers from 0 to 15, sorry, but so we'll put it smaller than 16. We could also put smaller than or equal to 15, whichever way you want to do it that makes more sense to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a %d, and I'm going to do a /t in between them to tab them apart, and then a %x. And so obviously the %d has the I variable going into it, but so does the %x. So I goes into both of them. In one place it gets interpreted as a decimal number, in the next it gets interpreted as a hexadecimal number. And we run that, and you can see now we've got 0, 0, 1, 1 all the way down to 10 is A, 13 is D, 15 is F, and so on. And you can see there straight away that the previous program that you had to do in order to achieve that was much longer, much more cumbersome. This is obviously a very quick way, and we can choose whatever amount of times we want that loop to run. Okay, so that's the simplest for loop that we're going to look at. And as I said, in the next lesson I'm going to look at a while loop, and I'm going to basically start with this program and modify it into a while loop, so you see where each of the different parts go.